Reppers Jasmine Crockett stunned the nation, hinting Barron may not be Trump's son. Leaked court files from 2019 fueled the claim, igniting a scandal shaking the White House. Secrets and millions unravel, leaving America asking what truth still hides in the shadows. Hold tight, what you're about to see could rewrite history before your eyes. Barron Trump may not be Donald Trump's biological son. Reppers Jasmine Crockett announced, her voice cutting through the tense chamber like a blade. The hearing room, already buzzing with anticipation, froze in an instant. Crockett gripped a USB drive that held documents capable of shattering the nation, and every eye in the room followed her as she walked down the aisle. Reporters leaned over barricades, microphones craning forward like spears ready to pierce the silence. Camera flashes erupted in rapid bursts, sweeping across the wood-paneled walls with blinding light. The heavy air grew suffocating, thick with whispers, the rustle of papers and the relentless clicking of shutters. Yet Crockett remained unmoved, her heels striking the marble floor in sharp rhythm, her gaze locked on the committee as if stripping away their secrets one by one. She paused at the witness table, her movements deliberate, every gesture echoing with intent. Members of the press scribbled furiously, their pens scratching like knives against paper. A few audience members gasped softly as she slid her bag onto the desk, the metallic clink of the USB faint but thunderous in meaning. She leaned forward, slid off her glasses, and spoke in a voice low but edged with steel. "I demand silence, not for me, but for the truth." A ripple coursed through the room. Uneasy glances darted across the committee table, aides whispering nervously to one another, their notes trembling in their hands. Chairman Reuben Geller stiffened in his seat, his jaw tightening as if bracing against an unseen storm. Crockett pressed on without pause, her tone cutting through the tension like a blade. "For too many years, this nation has protected power over truth. Today that ends." The words landed like thunderclaps. A few flashes went off, freezing her expression in eternal frames destined for front pages. Lifting the first file high, she froze the room. The cameras zoomed in their lenses, clicking with precision, the silence absolute, as if the entire building itself was holding its breath. "You are looking at sealed court records from Arizona 2019, she declared, her voice sharp, her eyes burning with resolve. Records buried by political influence and legal trickery. They directly implicate former President Trump, a federal employee, and a child." Gasps tore through the chamber. Lawmakers leaned forward, their eyes wide, knuckles whitening as they gripped the edges of their chairs. Staffers exchanged frantic whispers, their pens slipping as they tried to capture every word. Crockett drew a deep breath and unleashed the words that would fracture Washington. That child, Barron Trump, may not be his biological son. The air cracked with disbelief. Murmurs burst like sparks across the room, rippling into a storm of voices that the chairman struggled to contain. Journalists shouted over one another, trying to hurl questions above the chaos, while the cameras swung wildly from one stunned lawmaker to another. "This is no rumor," Crockett continued, her voice firm, resonant, unwavering against the uproar. "I hold a sworn affidavit from a federal employee who managed the files. It documents a $3.1 million payment to a woman identified only as TB, tied to a paternity agreement, yet no DNA test was ever conducted." Every eye locked on the pages as she laid them down, every detail burned into the public record like a brand seared into steel. The thick stack of documents looked heavier than stone, and the weight of their contents pressed on every chest in the room. Then came the question, silent yet explosive, hanging in the air like a fuse about to ignite. If Barron is not Trump's son, how far will America's power structure collapse? No one dared to speak, and the silence stretched thin, like a wire ready to snap. At that moment, live broadcasts cut in, and television screens across the country flashed in blazing red, "Barron may not be Trump's son." The impact was immediate and seismic. Social media detonated within seconds. Hashtags Barron mystery and hashtags Crockett expose surged across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Outrage and disbelief collided with panic as the story spread like wildfire. Clips of Crockett raising the file looped endlessly, millions of eyes replaying the moment as if searching for hidden clues. For millions, the scandal was no longer a rumor, but an unfolding reality, raw, televised, unstoppable. Outside the hearing room, crowds pressed against police barricades, their chants a rising tide. Some screamed for justice, others hurled accusations of political warfare. Helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting the chaos live from the skies. Inside the White House, the Oval Office thundered with Trump's footsteps. The golden drapes, once symbols of authority, now seemed to mock his fury. He clutched the phone, his voice sharp with rage. This cannot happen. Shut it down. Control the narrative. Now staffers scrambled in shock, papers scattering laptops, snapping open every aide glued to glowing screens that blared the headline. The walls themselves seemed to vibrate with Trump's fury as he slammed the desk, his fist closing around a pen so tightly it nearly snapped in half. Meanwhile, Crockett stood her ground in the hearing room, absorbing every twitch of nervous energy from those in power. When asked about the affidavit and the $3.1 million payout, she faced the cameras head-on. Her posture radiated an icy calm, as if she had prepared for the storm her entire life. "The truth cannot be buried forever," she said with chilling certainty. "The only question is, who will stand up to defend it?" Anchors on national networks struggled to keep pace with the chaos unfolding in real time. If Barron is not Trump's biological son, what does this mean for his presidency and his power? One gasped on CNN, the question hanging like an open wound. Analysts debated feverishly, some calling it a constitutional earthquake, others labeling it a dangerous hoax designed to destabilize America. Yet every passing second amplified the scandal. Crockett only smiled cold and unflinching as her hand brushed across the USB drive. To the audience at home, it looked like she was holding a live time bomb, seconds away from detonation. The White House deployed its media teams in desperation, but the story had already slipped beyond their grasp. Analysts, ex-advisors, and even Trump's closest allies scrambled to contain the damage, their talking points collapsing against the tidal wave of leaked details. Civil rights groups and independent lawyers dissected every revelation in real time, their statements broadcast across a fractured nation. America was not watching a scandal. It was watching history rupture before its eyes. Crockett raised the evidence again. Bank transfers, affidavits, unsigned DNA agreements, every page sealed and stamped in red. The stack was a mountain of betrayal, and the camera zoomed closer, each frame a dagger into the facade of power. "These are facts," she declared, her voice slicing through the noise. "Not speculation, not rumor. This is direct proof of abuse, of secrets buried for years." The weight of her words rippled outward like shock waves beyond the chamber, beyond the city, across the nation. In homes, on phones, glowing in the dead of night, millions sat frozen, their pulses racing. Every second fed the firestorm, anger, disbelief, fear, exhilaration, all crashing together in a cacophony that no one could control. Then Crockett drew her breath, steadied herself, and pierced the lens with her final words. The room seemed to shrink, every soul tethered to her voice. "Who dares to face the truth? Who will answer to this nation?" The silence that followed was deafening, stretching across living rooms, bars, airports, and crowded streets. Her last question cracked like thunder, rattling the foundations of power. With the whole world watching, will Trump smother the truth? Or is this the moment America's history is rewritten forever? Jasmine Crockett didn't just walk into the hearing room. She struck it like a storm, breaking through locked doors, each heel clashing against the marble floor like a countdown to detonation. In her hand, she gripped a small black USB drive. Its weight far heavier than plastic and metal, it carried documents capable of shaking the foundations of the nation. The chamber itself felt like a coliseum, every seat packed with lawmakers, journalists, aides, and cameras pointed like weapons waiting for blood. Floodlights hung from the rafters, blazing so hot the air shimmered. Flashes erupted in bursts, slicing through the atmosphere, leaving a sharp smell of ozone mixed with the stale perfume of old power and old lies. The air grew suffocating, thick with whispers, the restless rustle of papers, the metallic clatter of pens against notebooks. Camera shutters clicked relentlessly, a mechanical drumbeat of anticipation. Somewhere in the back, a protester's muffled chant was silenced by security, but its echo lingered like a phantom. Yet through all of it, Crockett remained unmoved. Her eyes steady and merciless, locked on the committee, as though stripping them bare. Each step forward seemed choreographed, each pause deliberate. She was not walking into a hearing. She was marching onto a battlefield. When she reached the witness table, she leaned forward, slid her glasses from her face and let them rest with a soft, decisive clink on the wood. Her voice followed low, smooth yet edged with steel. I demand silence. Not for me, but for the truth. The command cut through the noise like a blade. For a moment, even the shutters stilled as if the room itself obeyed her. Uneasy glances darted across the committee table, aides whispering frantically in ears. Chairman Reuben Geller, normally an unshakable figure, stiffened in his seat, fingers curling around his gavel as though it were a shield. But Crockett pressed forward without pause, her tone slicing through the tension with surgical precision. For too many years, she said, her gaze sweeping the chamber, this nation has chosen to protect power over truth. But today, that ends. She lifted the first file from her briefcase, holding it aloft with a deliberate slowness that forced every eye to track the motion. The room froze, cameras zooming in every lens, capturing the taut curve of the manila folder between her fingers. The silence thickened heavy as wet concrete. Then her voice rang out sharp and unflinching. "You are looking at sealed court records from Arizona 2019, she declared. Records buried by political influence and legal trickery. Records that directly implicate former President Donald J. Trump, a federal employee, and a child." The chamber trembled. A collective gasp swept the rows of onlookers. Lawmakers leaned forward instinctively, eyes wide, knuckles whitening around chair arms. The sound of a glass clinking somewhere in the press gallery shattered the silence, only to be swallowed again by dread. Crockett drew a long, deliberate breath, her chest rising with the weight of what was about to be unleashed. And then she dropped the words like a bomb. That child, Barron Trump, may not be his biological son. The room detonated. Murmurs burst like sparks across the chamber, a crackling wildfire of disbelief and shock. Reporters gasped audibly, typing furiously, phones vibrating with the frantic urgency of breaking news. Cameras swung violently from Crockett's face to the committee, to each pale, stricken lawmaker. On television screens across the country, the chyron erupted in blazing red. Breaking: Barron may not be Trump's son. The ripple became an earthquake. "This is no rumor," Crockett pressed on her voice, unshaken, resonant, unwavering. "I hold in my hands a sworn affidavit from a federal employee tasked with managing the files. It documents a $3.1 million payment made to a woman identified only as TB, a payment tied to a paternity agreement. Yet no DNA test was ever conducted." Her words landed like hammer strikes, each syllable a nail driven into the edifice of power. The committee sat frozen, unable or unwilling to interrupt. Some avoided her eyes, others glared with barely restrained hostility, but none could deny the evidence glowing under the lights. The question, unspoken yet thunderous, pulsed through the room. If Barron is not Trump's son, how far will America's power structure collapse? The silence stretched taut as a wire ready to snap. Then, as if on cue, the world outside erupted. Screens lit up in living rooms, offices, bars, classrooms. Social media detonated with hashtags Barron Mystery, hashtags Crockett Expose, hashtags Trump Legacy. Twitter feeds became infernos of outrage and disbelief. TikTok videos racked up millions of views in minutes, clips of Crockett's voice, layered with ominous music, teenagers wide-eyed in stitched reactions. Instagram stories pulsed with headlines, rumors, conspiracies. The scandal was no longer speculation. It was a spectacle, raw, televised, unstoppable. Inside the White House, chaos reigned. The Oval Office thundered with Trump's footsteps, each stride heavy with fury. He clutched a phone to his ear, his voice a jagged blade cutting through the room. "This cannot happen. Shut it down. Control the narrative." Now staffers scrambled papers, flew calls, went out to loyal networks. The air itself seemed to vibrate with panic. Trump's face was flushed, crimson beads of sweat clinging to his temples. His fist closed around a gold pen so tightly it bent, nearly snapping in half. He barked at advisors, demanding loyalty, demanding silence, demanding a miracle to contain the storm already slipping beyond his grip. Meanwhile, in the hearing room, Crockett stood as still as a monument, absorbing every twitch of nervous energy from the committee and press. When asked about the affidavit and the $3.1 million payout, she did not flinch. Instead, she faced the cameras head-on, her voice a cold flame. The truth cannot be buried forever. The only question is who will stand up to defend it. News anchors across the country scrambled their voices, a mixture of shock and disbelief. If Barron is not Trump's biological son, one anchor stammered on CNN. What does this mean for his presidency? For his power? For the very foundations of American democracy? Crockett only smiled a thin, cold smile, her hand brushing the USB drive like it was a detonator. To the millions watching at home, it was no longer a piece of technology. It was a live time bomb, its countdown already ticking. The White House unleashed its media teams in desperation. Friendly outlets were flooded with counter-narratives, accusations that Crockett was fabricating evidence, claims of partisan witch hunts, desperate attempts to paint her as unhinged. But the speed of the digital wildfire was merciless. Analysts, ex-advisors, legal scholars, everyone rushed onto live streams and podcasts, dissecting each revelation in real time. Civil rights groups called it a constitutional earthquake. For once, America wasn't watching a scandal, it was watching history rupture live. Crockett raised the evidence again. Bank transfers, sworn affidavits, unsigned DNA agreements, every page sealed and stamped in red. The cameras zoomed closer, each frame a dagger driving deeper into the facade of power. These are facts, she declared, voice slicing through the panic. Not speculation, not rumor. This is proof of abuse, of secrets buried for years under the weight of power. Her words did not stay contained within the chamber. They spilled outward, carried on television signals, live streams, and endless shares across platforms. In diners and subway stations, strangers argued heatedly. On college campuses, students huddled in clusters, watching live streams with wide eyes. In the streets of D.C., protesters gathered, spontaneously waving handmade signs, "Truth over power and DNA doesn't lie." Police presence doubled, sirens wailed, the Capitol itself braced for unrest. Back in the chamber, Crockett's voice grew colder, harder, each phrase a sharpened blade. Who dares to face the truth? Who will answer to this nation? The final question hung in the air like thunder. Her eyes burned into the cameras, into every household, every phone screen, every soul forced to confront the possibility that the nation's most guarded secret had just been torn open. And then, with the world holding its breath, she asked the words that cracked like lightning across history. With the whole world watching, will Donald Trump smother the truth, or is this the moment America's story is rewritten forever? Silence followed. A silence not of calm but of dread. The silence before a nation chooses war with itself. Night descended on Washington like a heavy shroud, thick with fog and the hum of hidden secrets. The city that usually glimmered under its monuments now seemed suffocated by unease. The streetlights cut through the mist like jagged blades, scattering fractured beams across wet asphalt, while the Capitol dome loomed in the distance, a ghostly silhouette veiled in haze. In the heart of the storm sat Genevieve Larson alone in her cramped apartment overlooking the Potomac. The glow of her computer screen cast harsh shadows across her pale face, her reflection in the glass window almost unrecognizable. Every click of her mouse echoed in the silence, each keystroke a hammer on her trembling nerves. With a shaky breath, she opened the video call. The connection crackled, and then Jasmine Crockett appeared, framed in dim light, her expression unreadable, but her eyes burning with steel. Crockett's voice sliced through the stillness like the edge of a blade, each word deliberate, cold, and commanding. "We need the whole truth, Genevieve. Every detail matters. Every piece could change the course of this investigation." The silence stretched between them, suffocating. Only the faint hum of the computer and the distant wail of a siren broke the air. Genevieve bowed her head, fingers clutching the edge of the desk, as if it were the last solid thing in her life. She wanted to appear strong, but fear betrayed her, in the tightness of her lips, the flicker of her eyes, the tremor in her voice. I can't go public," she whispered, her words brittle as glass. "But I can confirm the records. The payments, the agreements, every last piece. They're real." Crockett leaned forward, her face half lit by the glow of the screen shadows, sharpening the determination in her jawline. "Genevieve, listen to me. We need more than documents, we need a living witness. If they find out you're cooperating, you'll be in danger. Do you understand what's at stake?" Genevieve nodded, her throat tightening as flashes of memory flooded her shredded documents. In late-night offices, hurriedly deleted emails, veiled threats delivered in hushed tones. She remembered faces in the dark, men who smiled too easily, their eyes cold with warning. "They'll do anything to bury this," she said, her voice cracking under the weight of what she carried. "I've seen enough to know the cost, and it's steep." At the White House, the air inside the Situation Room turned electric, thick with dread. Advisors clustered around the oval table, their whispers colliding in frantic waves. Phones buzzed with alerts, folders thudded open, and the room swirled with panic. One voice broke through the clamor. "If she speaks, the entire network collapses. We have to stop her now." The president's face darkened, fury painted across every line. Trump's voice roared through the chamber, reverberating against the steel walls. "No one reveals a thing. Do you hear me? Shut it all down immediately." His fists slammed the table, rattling coffee cups, papers, even the nerves of seasoned generals. The air seemed to vibrate with the collision of power and fear. Across town, Crockett's office mirrored another kind of storm. Aides sat rigid, their hands shaking as they scribbled notes, their eyes darting to every sound outside the window, as if danger lurked in every shadow. Crockett, unflinching, fired off a message to her legal team. "Prepare yourselves. We're entering uncharted territory. Every step must be precise. Genevieve is the key, and we will not let anyone overturn the board." The fluorescent glow illuminated her face, revealing exhaustion etched in the lines around her eyes, yet also a fierce, unyielding fire. Each of Genevieve's words replayed in her mind, daggers slicing into the machinery of power. Crockett knew that every revelation, every piece of evidence was a fuse lit beneath the foundations of the government. Will others still hiding in the shadows find the courage to step forward? She murmured to herself, or remained silent to guard the throne. Inside the National Security Council chamber, unease thickened. The lights flickered as if the very building trembled under the storm. Trump's roar cracked the silence. "I will not let this happen." "Shut everything down." His voice thundered like an approaching avalanche, crushing every whisper of dissent. Advisors froze, some staring down at their notes, others exchanging nervous glances. A trembling aide dared to speak. "Sir, can we even control this?" Trump's reply exploded like thunder. "Control. This is absolute power, and we will crush them before the truth explodes." His face flushed, scarlet sweat glistening at his temples, yet in his eyes flickered something raw fear. Back in her office, Crockett sat upright, her posture unyielding, as if carved from stone. Her voice, though calm, carried the edge of steel. "They will do everything to silence us, but we have the evidence, the testimony, the files. Every move we make must be deliberate, every reveal timed perfectly." An aide's nervous voice interrupted. "If they attack us directly," Crockett silenced him with a sharp glare, her words cutting like a blade. "Safety is an illusion. We're not just fighting lies. We're fighting absolute power itself. And if we don't stand now, the truth will be buried forever." The storm spilled into public view when Trump appeared on national television, his smile tight, his voice trembling beneath forced bravado. "It's all lies, a filthy political conspiracy," he shouted, the words rehearsed but hollow. Yet as the cameras rolled, Crockett stood firm before reporters, spreading documents across her desk. The crimson stamps of authenticity glowed under the lights. "These are not lies," she declared, her voice carrying like a battle cry. "This is evidence. $3.1 million wired to conceal the truth. A DNA test that was never carried out. Court records confirming every detail." Gasps rippled through the press room. A reporter muttered, barely audible, "If she releases everything, the entire power structure crumbles." Crockett locked eyes with the cameras, her tone unflinching. "Power is only frightening if you stay silent. We chose to stand. The question is, who else will dare to keep this buried across the city in a darkened chamber?" Trump's aides scrambled. A phone rang, its shrill tone cutting the air. One advisor leaned close, whispering in terror. "Sir, they're preparing to release more files. Everything could explode any second." Trump slammed his fist against the desk, his voice shaking with rage. "Impossible. This conspiracy will not see the light of day." But the tide had already shifted. On Crockett's desk lay another stack of papers, each page a nail in the coffin of secrecy. Her voice resonated through the halls like a drumbeat of destiny. One person standing can bring down an empire. Who will be next? Outside, the air grew thick with unrest. Washington's skyline glowed ominously red, as if fire lurked just beyond the horizon. Protesters filled the streets, their chants splitting the night. The truth cannot be silenced. Police clashed with crowds, shields rattling against raised fists. In one corner, a student lifted a banner high above the smoke. Justice now or never. On the other side, counter-protesters screamed in fury. This is a witch hunt. They're attacking the president. The streets became a battlefield, the nation's divisions laid bare in the echo of every shout, every clash, every tear gas canister cracking open. Inside Crockett's congressional office, chaos reigned. Phones rang without pause, inboxes overflowed with threats and pleas alike. Staffers darted in every direction, some clutching files, others fielding calls from frightened allies. Yet at the center of the storm, Crockett stood steady, clutching the documents as if they were both shield and weapon. Her voice, low but steady, anchored the chaos. Every detail can be the spark. Whoever dares step forward now will change history. An aide, pale and sweating, leaned close, whispering, "But is the public ready to face the truth?" Crockett turned, her eyes blazing with unyielding conviction. If not now, then when? The deeper they bury it, the harder it erupts. Truth always finds its way out. And when it does, no wall of power will stand. The cameras panned across Washington that night, the blinding floodlights outside the Capitol, the furious pounding of fists on the White House gates, the restless crowds gathering in town squares across America. Online Twitter burned like wildfire, hashtags multiplying by the millions. TikTok dissected every frame of Crockett's broadcast, while YouTube streams carried heated debates into homes around the globe. In the CNN studio, a political analyst, his voice shaking, declared, "If these files are real, this isn't just a scandal. It's an earthquake unlike anything America has ever seen." In battleground states, crowds gathered beneath fluttering banners, their chants rising like thunder. "We want the truth." The storm was unstoppable now, devouring everything in its path. And in the heart of it, Crockett hurled her challenge into the night, her voice echoing across the nation. Will power extinguish the truth, or will the courage of a few ignite a fire no one can contain? The chamber nearly exploded as Jasmine Crockett stepped to the podium, a USB drive glinting under the unforgiving lights. The air in the room seemed to thicken, every movement magnified by the silence that pressed down like a physical weight. Across from her, Trump's face burned, crimson beads of sweat collecting at his temple, as he clenched a folder so tightly the papers inside bent and crumpled in his fists. His eyes blazed with fury, locked onto Crockett, as though sheer willpower alone could devour his rival whole. Every camera in the room pivoted toward the confrontation lenses, glinting like a forest of watchful eyes. They captured not only the faces at the podium, but the anxious committee members, the shifting posture of aides, and the reporters, whose expressions were wound taut as bowstrings. Crockett drew in a slow, measured breath. Her shoulders rose and fell with deliberate calm, a contrast to the storm raging opposite her. When she spoke, her voice cut like steel, steady yet razor-sharp, carrying through the vaulted chamber with surgical precision. "Everything hidden in the shadows will be dragged into the light," she declared, her tone rising like a blade unsheathed. And today the entire nation will see. Trump's voice erupted, shattering her words. He leaned into the microphone, his shout reverberating across the chamber's marble walls. Half snarl, half thunder, his tone was laced with authority and desperation. "You're fabricating. These words will destroy the honor of my family. You have no right." The veins in his neck bulged, and the force of his voice rattled the water glasses set before committee members. But Crockett did not flinch. Her gaze fixed on Trump with unyielding intensity, her voice sharp enough to slice through his bluster. "Honor built on lies is no honor at all," she shot back. "And the truth does not wait for your permission. The evidence I hold will prove every word I speak." Her hands remained still on the podium, the very picture of composure, while cameras zoomed in on her steady eyes. One of Trump's aides, pale, sweating, and nearly stumbling over his own shoes, rushed forward to whisper frantically in his ear. The aide's lips moved urgently, but Trump shoved him aside with a curt wave, his voice defiant as he leaned back toward the microphone. "You dare present sealed documents? Do you even understand the consequences?" His tone rose higher, a man screaming into the abyss, hoping sheer volume could halt inevitability. Crockett struck the USB against the desk, the sharp crack echoing like a gunshot. The sound made several committee members jump, and even reporters in the press gallery stiffened as the tension ratcheted up another notch. Her voice rang out amplified by the chamber's acoustics. "The only consequence is a light shining where power has hidden for too long. We are talking about money DNA and the truth abandoned. America is watching you, Mr. President." Her words hung in the air like the toll of a bell impossible to ignore. The tension threatened to detonate. Trump's chest heaved as he stepped closer to the podium, his posture predatory, his tone venomous. "You don't know the fire you're playing with," he hissed, his hands slamming down onto the table. "You will pay for this." Crockett's reply came with a cold razor smile that seemed to slice the air. "I've prepared for every price," she said evenly, her eyes never wavering. "The question is, have you prepared for the truth?" The line landed like a dagger, the words echoing through the chamber, before fading into the heavy silence. Committee members sat frozen, their knuckles white as they gripped pens and folders. Reporters' cameras never wavered, zooming close on clenched fists, fiery eyes, the trembling rhythm of breath that betrayed just how combustible the moment had become. Outside the chamber, millions watched live social media feeds exploding in real time. Twitter threads ignited, TikTok clips replayed, and hashtags spiraled into trending chaos. The streets outside the Capitol mirrored the storm inside, horns blaring, protesters chanting, the very air vibrating with unrest. A political earthquake was rippling outward, shaking the nation to its core. This was no mere war of words. It was a duel between truth and power, justice and concealment, with America holding its breath as if balanced on the edge of a knife. Crockett lifted the USB high, the polished metal catching the lights and reflecting straight into Trump's furious eyes like the gleam of a dagger. "The truth cannot be stopped," she declared, her voice like the strike of a gavel. "And now, Mr. President, are you ready to face it?" Then came silence, not the ordinary hush of a crowd, but a suffocating stillness, as if the entire building had been vacuum sealed. Even the air conditioners seemed to stall. Crockett pressed the laptop key, and in that instant, history shifted. From the speakers, Trump's own voice rang out, unmistakable, undeniable, venomous. "Just delay the DNA test a few more weeks. No one needs to know." The words slithered into the chamber, filling every corner, leaving no room for denial. The room froze. Reporters' jaws dropped, pens clattered to the floor, and cameras zoomed in with surgical precision. All eyes snapped to Crockett, who stood unyielding, her glare fixed like ice on Trump. The weight of her revelation thundered through the chamber like a bomb detonating in slow motion. Trump lunged forward, his face scarlet, sweat dripping down his brow, roaring into the microphone. "What the hell are you playing? You have no right to release this. This is a flagrant violation." His voice cracked with rage, but also with fear. Crockett's response was steel, every syllable deliberate. "Power does not create truth. You of all people know that. The nation is listening. What you tried to bury about Barron cannot stay buried any longer." Gasps erupted from the audience, and the cameras captured every flicker of horror that spread across Trump's face. An aide scrambled toward the laptop, hands reaching desperately to shut off the audio, but Crockett stepped into his path, her voice slicing the air. "No more cover-ups. The people deserve the full truth." Her arm extended, blocking him with the ease of a soldier holding the line. The recording grew louder, Trump's voice turning anxious, admitting to further delays. An instantly live broadcast detonated across every news network in the country. Anchor desks lit up, Chiron bars screaming, "Breaking Trump DNA cover-up audio." Cameras zeroed in on Crockett's face, calm, commanding a cold smile carrying more weight than any threat. Meanwhile, Trump's voice cracked again, sliding into desperation as he shouted, "You will pay. You don't understand the consequences." Crockett's reply landed like a death blow. The only consequence is truth finally revealed. You can scream, you can threaten, but justice and transparency will prevail. And the nation is listening, Mr. President. The scene detonated beyond the walls of the Capitol. Political analysts scrambled onto television screens, dissecting every second of the exchange. Twitter and TikTok burned like wildfire, clips replayed millions of times, hashtags Barron DNA, hashtags Crockett truth, hashtags Trump scandal, exploding into global trends. One CNN reporter gasped live on air. Never before has a single recording sent such a shockwave through American politics. At Mar-a-Lago, Trump seethed behind gilded doors surrounded by panicked advisors. His voice was a growl, barely restrained fury. We have to control this. We cannot let it spiral across social media. His advisors shifted uncomfortably, their faces pale. One aide, hands trembling, warned, "Sir, engagement is out of control. Every attempt to suppress it will backfire." Trump's fist slammed the table, rattling glasses of water. "She will pay for this. I will not allow her to win." Meanwhile, protests ignited across America. In Washington, D.C., New York, Los Angeles streets overflowed with banners demanding DNA tests, transparency, and justice. The roar of voices filled avenues, usually drowned in traffic. A college student stood on the roof of a car megaphone, raised, shouting, "The truth cannot be hidden. We want justice for Barron and accountability for our nation." Opposing crowds gathered as well, Trump loyalists screaming in defense of their leader. The air split with rage in division cities, vibrating with unrest as if the country itself were cracking in two. On live television, pundits clashed in vicious debate. A conservative commentator shouted into the camera, "This is a witch hunt. Evidence obtained illegally cannot stand," while a progressive counterpart countered with equal fire. This is the truth, and the truth once heard cannot be silenced. Crockett, back at the podium, allowed the chaos to swirl around her like a storm she had already predicted. Her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. She turned to the cameras, her voice quiet, but cutting, her words aimed directly at the millions glued to their screens. "Power can threaten," she said, her tone steady as stone, "but truth always wins." In a furious late-night call, Trump's voice broke into a howl. "She is destroying me. She doesn't know who she's dealing with." His rage crackled through the line like static. Crockett's reply, delivered in another interview, was unflinching, her words cold as steel. "You can rage, you can threaten, but justice cannot be bought or buried. The world is watching, and indeed across America, the world did watch. From glowing phone screens in suburban living rooms to burning streets filled with chants, from newsrooms dissecting every clip to government halls trembling with consequence, every eye locked on the clash between Crockett and Trump. The chamber was now empty, but its echo remained reverberating through history, and the question thundered like a drumbeat through the soul of the republic: would America face the truth buried for years, or would it turn away from the greatest scandal in its history? The nation was still in shock from the explosive audio recording when Trump struck back with a stunning move, a lawsuit against Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, accusing her of political defamation and an assault on the nation itself. News outlets went live instantly, broadcasting every detail, from law firms drafting filings to the federal courthouse buzzing with reporters desperate for headlines. Hashtags like Crockett vs. Trump, legal battle, and Barron DNA stormed to the top of social media, igniting a frenzy. Crockett stepped before the press, her eyes cold, her hand gripping a folder, her face carved with unshakable defiance, like a woman daring an empire to crush her. At Mar-a-Lago, Trump erupted into the phone, his voice a growl of fury. "We must destroy her. I will not be humiliated nationwide by a woman, by a congresswoman." His lawyer tried to steady him. "Mr. President, we need legal precision, not just rage or media warfare." Trump slammed his fist on the desk, teeth grinding. "She will pay. America will see the cost of crossing me." But Crockett didn't flinch. On CNN, she stared directly into the camera, her voice sharp as steel. "You can wield every ounce of power, every legal trick to try and silence me. But justice is not a tool to be bought, bullied, or buried. I will not back down. And the American people will witness every step of this fight." The press swarmed, flashes exploding, capturing every flicker of her expression, transforming Crockett into a living symbol of defiance. In Congress, debates raged. Opposition lawmakers accused Trump of abusing the legal system as a weapon of intimidation. A black congressman rose to the floor, voice quaking with conviction. If we fail to defend Jasmine today, we send a chilling message that power can strangle justice and truth can be bought into silence. From the gallery, Crockett watched, her eyes burning with unyielding resolve. America was riveted. From secret meetings at Mar-a-Lago to crowded press briefings in D.C., the drama unfolded like a war in real time. Every article, every viral clip, every trending hashtag split the nation further as protests erupted in the streets. She is not alone. Truth must win, a protester shouted, his voice swallowed by the roar of thousands. And then the question rose like a fuse, ready to ignite. Could one woman withstand the full might of a former president's legal, political, and media machine? Or would truth be buried once more under the weight of power? Cities exploded with demonstrations. Banners waved, high chants thundered. Truth must be revealed. Justice cannot wait. Minority communities poured into the streets, their fury matched only by their determination. Live streams blazed across TikTok and Twitter, the numbers climbing so fast that major networks struggled to keep pace with the digital wildfire. In a coffee shop in Washington, D.C., a group of students watched the live stream. One slammed his fist on the table. They think they can intimidate her, but Jasmine Crockett fears no one. She's standing for the truth before the entire nation. His friend, voice trembling, whispered, but Trump will strike back harder. Is this country strong enough to stand with her inside a private office? Trump raged again. We must crush this movement before it consumes us. She is attacking the very core of my legacy. His lawyer, bowing his head, murmured, Sir, the people are awakening. They're not just watching, they're moving. On live television, Crockett appeared once more, her voice slicing the air. We are not only fighting for truth, we are fighting for millions who have been silenced. The era of silence ends today. From the crowd, a woman screamed through tears. She is our hope. Yet moments later, Trump stormed onto another network, voice booming, These accusations are lies. No one manipulates me. The duel escalated. Crockett fired back, her tone searing. You've hidden the truth for far too long. Millions of Americans deserve to know what you buried. The live broadcast became a battleground, every word a strike, every glance a weapon, every second dragging viewers to the edge of their seats. Online, the war raged. Politicians, journalists, pundits hurled words like missiles. Crockett is exposing what the nation was never meant to see, one tweet declared. Another fired back. She's dismantling the foundation. Trump must act now. The clash of outrage, fear, and curiosity boiled like a volcano on the brink. Staring into the camera, Crockett's eyes glimmered like a blade in the dark. Collective strength can topple even the most absolute power. But the question remains, are we strong enough to bring truth into the light, or will power suffocate it once again? As protests dimmed into the night, Crockett appeared live on a morning talk show. Dozens of cameras turned toward her. The studio tensed, the nation's heartbeat pounding through every broadcast. She held up the USB, her fingers tightening, her voice low but razor sharp. What I am about to reveal is not for the faint of heart. It will upend everything you thought was untouchable. The host, visibly shaken, asked, Aren't you afraid of Trump's response? He's watching your every move. Crockett's lips curled into a cold smile, her eyes unblinking. He may watch, but he cannot control. No power on earth can bury the truth this time. The studio fell silent. The only sound, the relentless clicking of cameras recording history in real time. Within minutes, the clip detonated across Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, numbers skyrocketing, views multiplying by the second. The nation fractured, one half hailing Crockett as fearless, the other screaming that she was orchestrating a ruthless political coup. Reporters clashed in the streets, shouting accusations over each other. She's manipulating the people? No, she's breaking the chains of decades of lies, refusing to retreat. Crockett live-streamed from a bustling cafe, the camera sweeping across faces filled with awe and fire. They never wanted you to know the truth. But every threat, every attempt to silence me only proves why you must see clearly. This is not just about me, it's about all of us. From the crowd, a young man shouted, "She's the flame in the storm, we can't look away." Trump, meanwhile, called a press conference, his voice cracking with rage. "All lies. They want to destroy my family. They want to destroy America," a reporter whispered to his colleague. "This is beyond politics. It's war, and the whole nation is being pulled into the eye of the storm." Crockett ended her live stream with a stare so sharp it cut through the lens, her words landing like a final blade. The people are awake. But the real question remains, will those in power have the courage to face the truth, or will they bury it again before it explodes? And with that, America held its breath, waiting, watching, bracing for the next strike in a political war that could shatter everything. The moment Crockett ended her live stream, her phone lit up in a storm of vibrations, thousands of notifications, tweets, clips, and comments tearing across the internet. Every detail about Barron and the $3.1 million payment tied to the untested DNA file spread like wildfire. On social media, student groups, campaign activists, and furious citizens amplified her words, turning them into a tidal wave of outrage that now pressed directly onto Congress and the Senate. Marches erupted across cities' banners, reading "Truth before the election," flooding the streets as the public demanded transparency on the eve of democracy's most critical moment. Inside the Capitol, the air was suffocating, thick like smoke from a fire ready to ignite. The committee chair slammed his hand on the table, voice sharp as a blade. "We've just witnessed a direct shock from the public and the press. If Barron truly isn't Trump's biological son, this could detonate into a political earthquake before the election." Another lawmaker, trembling with rage, shouted, "Hidden payments of $3.1 million DNA records deliberately delayed, and the people lied to. Who will take responsibility for this betrayal?" Crockett stood firm, eyes cold but blazing with defiance, facing the cameras head-on. They believe power can bury the truth. But in the face of an election, silence is impossible. Barron is the centerpiece of their conspiracy, and when America sees the truth, the nation will erupt. A reporter cried out, breathless, "Jasmine, how do you expect Trump to react under this pressure?" Without blinking, Crockett shot back. "They only wield temporary power. Truth cannot be extinguished, and the people will see everything before they cast their votes." The Senate convened an emergency session. Voices clashed, tempers flared. One senator roared, "Barron's parentage is no longer a private matter. It's a political powder keg. If we fail to act, public outrage will explode at the ballot box." Crockett rose, clutching a photocopy of the USB like a weapon. "This is bigger than one man. This is a system manipulated, a democracy deceived. Once Barron's DNA is revealed, silence will not return, and every vote cast will be reshaped by that truth." At Mar-a-Lago, Trump's advisor stumbled into the room, face pale as chalk. "We must seize control of the media. Our entire election strategy is collapsing. If Barron isn't truly your son, this will be the storm of the century." A lawmaker, voice hoarse with dread, declared, "This isn't just scandal. It's dynamite under the foundations of democracy. The people will not stand by, and the election itself could be rewritten." Crockett's reply cut the air like steel. "Power may tremble, but the truth before an election cannot and will not be buried." The Capitol fell into a tense silence. Her words hung in the chamber like the echo of a warning shot, each syllable dripping with defiance. When the truth about Barron finally explodes, who among us will dare to stand steady in the storm between power fury and the ballot that decides the nation's fate? That night, Crockett's living room was cloaked in silence, but the tension was suffocating. Her phone rang endlessly, texts, emails, anonymous calls. "Stop now or someone will regret it for life. Your family is no longer safe, Jasmine." Each word sliced like a dagger, but her grip on the USB holding the $3.1 million trail and the untested DNA files never wavered. Her eyes burned with icy resolve. A strange car parked outside her home. Shadows lingered by the window. Footsteps echoed in the alley. Her husband's voice trembled with fear. "Are you sure you want to continue? We're being dragged into chaos." Crockett turned her stare like a blade. "If I don't, who will protect the people's vote from deceit? Barron and the truth behind the $3.1 million cannot wait, not when democracy itself is on the line." Allies warned her with urgent whispers. Jasmine, you're walking on a knife's edge. Trump won't stop at threats. They'll try to destroy your career, your name, your life. She smirked coldly, her voice razor sharp. If the truth has the power to shake the ballot box, then every sacrifice is worth it. Every threat only fuels my fire. Social media turned into a war zone. Hashtags Barron Truth and hashtags 45eco erupted, sparking digital combat. Deepfake videos and smear campaigns flooded the web, desperate to poison public opinion. Reporters pressed her, "Aren't you afraid? Your career, your family, your safety, everything is on the line." She faced the camera unflinching. Fear is what they want. But when Barron's DNA and the $3.1 million payoff are exposed, the people will finally see who is manipulating their votes. That truth outweighs everything. On the eve of her next hearing, an anonymous voice cut through the static on her phone. "They're watching your every move. One mistake and your family will be swallowed by chaos." Crockett set the phone down, her body tense, but her voice unyielding as iron. "They can threaten all they want, but the truth will not be buried. Before this election, the people will see Barron. They will see the $3.1 million trail, and they will decide for themselves." Outside the city boiled over protests. Chance demands for transparency shook the streets and flooded timelines. In the rare silence of her room, Crockett whispered to herself, "One person alone may be fragile, but truth armed with the people's vote cannot retreat. When this breaks open, no power on earth will stop the wave." The committee room pulsed with tension, cameras zooming in on every expression. Crockett strode in, eyes burning, gripping the USB like a blade of justice. "Enough. Every lie ends here." Her voice thundered across the chamber, freezing every soul in place. A new witness stepped forward, trembling but resolute. "I handled the secret payments. I saw the deliberate delays in Barron's DNA testing." A stunned committee member whispered, "If this is true, Barron isn't Trump's biological son." Crockett's voice slashed through the silence. "Correct, and every attempt to bury it will collapse. The truth will annihilate their scheme." Trump roared, face crimson. "This is slander, lies, election interference in broad daylight." Crockett's retort was like a gunshot. "Enough lies. Votes are not commodities to be bought. Barron, the $3.1 million, the delayed DNA, this is living proof, and you cannot erase it." Each word struck like a hammer. Trump's hands trembling, his jaw clenched as the ground shifted beneath him. Outside, chaos erupted. Crowds screamed transparency, truth, police sirens wailed as protesters and counter-protesters collided. Cameras broadcasted every second, TikTok and Twitter exploding with live feeds, millions witnessing history in real time. A lawmaker whispered, voice quaking, "I've never seen a political storm this violent, especially before an election." Crockett's eyes blazed like fire. "Who dares bury the truth? Look at the evidence. Look at who manipulates elections, who delays DNA tests. It ends today under the eyes of the people." Cameras cut to Trump. His lips pressed tight, his hands shaking, his power crumbling as truth and public fury surged beyond control. "Enough today, the veil is torn apart. The truth, no matter how bitter, will not be silenced, and this election will witness the awakening of an entire nation. Those who dare deceive the people will pay the price." The Senate hearing chamber had never felt so much like a battlefield. Crystal chandeliers burned overhead, their golden light glinting off marble pillars, as if illuminating the very weight of history pressing down on everyone present. The air was stifling, thick with sweat, nerves, and the faint scent of polished wood mixed with coffee long gone cold. Journalists lined the back of the room, cameras perched on their shoulders, red lights blinking like tiny, unrelenting eyes. Every cough, every shuffle of paper echoed as if the chamber itself demanded silence before the storm. As the new witness appeared and the damning evidence was revealed, Trump stood frozen at his table. His normally restless gestures stilled. His eyes narrowed to slits and his fingers interlocked so tightly that the knuckles turned ghostly white. He looked not like a man in control, but like someone clinging to the last plank of a sinking ship. Camera flashes cracked through the air, like sudden bolts of lightning, each flare reflecting the unbearable tension. Every photograph taken felt like another nail being driven into the coffin of his control. At that precise moment, Crockett strode in. Her entrance cut through the haze like a blade. She clutched a thick dossier in her arm, the spine stuffed with tabbed notes and dog-eared pages evidence that seemed to weigh as much as the truth itself. Her cold smile never faltered. It wasn't the smile of triumph, it was sharper, almost predatory, a warning that the veneer of secrecy was about to be ripped away. Her gaze swept the room like a scalpel, slicing through senators, reporters, even the former president himself sharp enough to cut steel. The silence in the chamber was suffocating like the pressure before a thunderclap. Only the steady clicks of recorders and the heavy, anxious breathing of those inside broke the stillness. Even the grand clock on the far wall ticked too loudly, its hands dragging the moment into eternity. Then Trump's voice sliced through. Gravelly sharp, each syllable pressed like a threat. You think you can expose me with a few scraps of paper? Jasmine, I will not let this circus unfold in this chamber. The chamber tensed. Reporters leaned forward, pens scratching furiously. Crockett lifted the file high, the weight of its contents reverberating in her raised arm. Her voice boomed like thunder, reverberating against marble and echoing across microphones. You no longer control the narrative. The evidence, the witnesses, and the American people are watching your every move. Barron is not your son, and every delay, every bribe, every manipulation of the law will be dragged into the light today. The clash detonated instantly. Trump surged forward from his seat, his face flushed crimson, his hands slicing violently through the air. You are defiling my family. I will sue you for slander, for destroying my name. My power? Crockett didn't flinch. Her reply came sharp as a blade, her voice unwavering in the storm. Honor, you buried truth for years under power and money. Today there is no more room for lies, and the people will no longer tolerate your deceit. The Senate chamber erupted into chaos. Senators shot up from their chairs, robes flaring, voices clashing like steel on steel. One slammed his hand against the desk, shouting, "If this is true, the coming election will be nothing less than a battlefield between truth and corrupted power." Another whispered in dread to his colleague, "The public cannot survive another avalanche of lies." Staffers scrambled, trying to calm the storm, but order had fled. Meanwhile, outside the Capitol walls, the protests swelled into a roar. Thousands filled the plaza, their signs bobbing like waves in a furious sea. Transparency, they cried. Truth, justice. The chants throbbed like a heartbeat, shaking the building itself. Police barricades strained against the press of bodies. A young man's voice boomed over a megaphone, rough but unyielding. We know the truth about Barron. We will not forgive the lies. Social media ignited like wildfire. TikTok, Twitter, Facebook screens across America lit up with live streams from inside the chamber. Every word from Crockett and Trump surged into homes, bars, classrooms, offices. A nation collectively held its breath. Crockett stepped closer to the table, each step deliberate, echoing in the room. Her tone was icy, her words sharp enough to slice through the din. You may wield power, wealth, and intimidation, but truth cuts deeper than any weapon. And anyone who still believes they can bury Barron's identity or manipulate this election will face the unstoppable force of an outraged nation. Trump's fist clutched the microphone, his face burning with rage. He leaned forward, eyes wide, veins pulsing at his temple. But the words caught in his throat. He could not stop her. He could not stop the flood. Today, Crockett declared, her voice rising like a battle cry. This nation stands at the edge of a precipice. Truth will not be denied. And anyone who lies, manipulates, or hides behind shadows will face the full wrath of the American people. Even before the echo faded, the storm spread to every legal office in Washington. Phones rang off the hook, aides sprinted between corridors, whispers of DNA evidence and legal bribery ricocheting like bullets. Trump's lawyers marched in their suits, immaculate, but their eyes blazing with desperation, files stacked high like shields for an impending siege. Trump appeared before the cameras, his face rigid, bloodshot eyes betraying panic, even as his lips pressed tight into a mask of control. Crockett entered behind him, her thick file in hand. Her presence alone altered the air, a pressure so heavy that even the reporters shifted uneasily. Trump hissed through clenched teeth, his voice low and venomous. You think you can humiliate me before the nation with a few recordings and scattered testimonies? I am the president. I decide everything. Crockett smirked, her voice cold steel. Power does not equal truth. You delayed Barron's DNA tests. You bent the law, you buried the facts, and now America is watching every step of your evasion. The chamber exploded once more. Gavels pounded microphones, screeched voices collided in a storm of outrage. A senator shouted over the din, "If Barron is not your son and you have hidden it, the upcoming election will become a nightmare of credibility." Trump slammed his hand down the sound like a gunshot. "No, impossible. You cannot force me to admit to this madness." Crockett advanced, her heels striking the floor in steady rhythm, her words cutting unyielding madness. "This truth will shatter your hollow empire. Today, America watches the collapse of your facade." Trump sneered, spittle catching at his lips, his voice dripping with scorn. "Oh, so clever, aren't you? Do you think a few live streams and tweets will bring me down?" Crockett's reply was merciless, her voice echoing into the rafters. "I don't need to make you tremble. Truth already has, and the people see it. Lies have no refuge anymore. Power has no shield." New witnesses stepped forward, the shuffle of papers and the thud of binders filling the silence as documents aligned. Each piece of evidence snapped perfectly into place like a puzzle revealing the image everyone had feared. Trump's control fractured visibly. His hands shook as he erupted, shouting, "This is a conspiracy. I am the victim here. Me against you and the entire system." Crockett's laugh was bitter, her grip on the file unyielding. "You manipulated, you concealed, but today truth crushes every illusion of power." America will not forget. Outside, the protests had become a firestorm. Live streams and short clips flooded the nation, stitched together into a narrative too powerful to ignore. The people roared against Trump, their voices rising in the support of Crockett. Every second was fuel for a political inferno. And as the storm refused to subside, America itself was left with a haunting question. Would power stand or collapse completely under the weight of truth? The cameras turned. Crockett stood live on national broadcast, tall and unflinching, eyes like steel, clutching her files as if they were a weapon of justice. Her heartbeat thundered in sync with the pulse of the nation. Without hesitation, she cut across the screen. "America, we have witnessed too much abuse of power, too many truths buried in shadows. And today I refuse to be silent." A reporter shouted from the back, "Do you understand the forces behind Trump will now come for you?" Crockett smirked, her gaze burning as if daring them to try. "They aim for me. They should fear something greater. The truth which will drown every false throne of power." She raised the file, daring an entire system to strike her down. Each word from her mouth landed like a blade in the hearts of millions. Barron is not his son. The delays, the payoffs, the manipulation of law, all exposed. And now the people must see clearly who manipulates and who has been deceived. The camera lingered on her expression, then cut to the avalanche of tweets, comments, and live streams crashing across the nation. Crowds roared, protests surged, the anger of a people becoming an unstoppable storm. Crockett's voice dropped low, each syllable sharp as a knife. No matter how thick the walls of power, truth always breaks through. There is no room left for fear, no room left for lies. A voice thundered from the chamber floor. "You dare stand before the nation and challenge the president?" Crockett shrugged, her eyes blazing with defiance. "I don't challenge. I reflect. And the truth itself will awaken America. Who dares remain silent in the face of outrage and conscience?" The final scene closed in slow motion. Crockett's face was lit by the glare of floodlights, the files in her hand glowing like the spark of a revolution. Her voice thundered like prophecy. "In a divided nation, truth waits for no one, and the only question that remains, who will step into the light and who will be swept away by the storm of conscience rising across America? When the last mask of deception falls, who will still stand and who will be consumed by the greatest reckoning this nation has ever seen?" And so it ended not with silence but with a challenge. A reminder that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the will to stand in the storm, to face fury and pressure, and to guard the truth no matter the cost. Jasmine Crockett had proven that resolve and integrity can blaze like fire, illuminating darkness, igniting hope, and shaking the pillars of power. And the final question remains for us all. Will you step beyond safety, confront injustice, and refuse to back down? This is not legal advice. This is a call to courage. Thank you for standing to the end. Your presence is the wind that carries us forward. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, and join us on the next battle for truth.